For the fourth time. I stood at the entrance of the county clerk's office for the fourth time. The marriage license application I gripped tightly in my hand had been warmed by my body heat, becoming slightly damp, like a prisoner awaiting a final verdict. Every time I looked up, I could see the glass doors across from me, symbolizing happiness and commitment. But to me, those doors felt as distant as another world. My phone rang at the worst possible moment. The name Jason Sterling flashed on the screen like a death warrant. I took a deep breath and pressed answer. Clara, baby, listen to me. Jason's familiar and gentle voice came through the receiver, carrying a trace of deliberate exhaustion. Something came up at the firm at the last minute. It's a highly important acquisition deal, and the major investor from the other side arrived early out of nowhere. I have to be there. I really can't get away. My heart grew colder by the inch, and the fingers gripping my phone began to turn white. So? I heard my own voice, ice cold and hollow. So we probably have to reschedule again today. He paused, seeming to weigh his words, and then spoke in a tone used to coax a child. Be good. Don't be angry. I know you've waited a long time. It's my fault. Once I finish this project, I promise I'll make it up to you. I'll take you to Maui, exactly where you wanted to go, okay? This again. Next time again? Compensation again. This was the fourth time he had used the exact same excuse at the very last second of our marriage registration to leave me hanging alone at the entrance of the busy county clerk's office. All around me, the couples paired up with joyful faces felt like needles piercing my heart. My dignity and my 4 years of youth seemed like a massive joke in this moment. Clara, are you listening? Stop throwing a tantrum. I really have to go into a meeting right now. Let's leave it at this. I'll call you back later. Jason seemed to have no patience to wait for my response and wanted to hang up in a hurry. Jason, I interrupted him, my voice carrying a tremor that even I hadn't noticed. Do you think there will be a next time? The other end of the line went silent. Just then, a female staff member in a county uniform, who had probably seen me standing there for too long and couldn't bear it anymore, half-jokingly said to me, Girl, stop waiting. Look at you. You've been waiting from morning until now, and you look completely drained. Your guy is just too unreliable. She pointed not far away. Look at that army officer over there. He's been waiting all morning, too. Looks like he got stood up as well. Why don't you just marry him instead? I think you two look pretty good together. I looked in the direction she was pointing. Not far away, a man in a crisp U.S. Army Green Service uniform stood quietly. His posture was like a pine tree, shoulders broad and waist trim. He had been there since I arrived. Hours had passed, and his stance hadn't shifted even once. He seemed to have heard the staff member's joke as well. He turned his head, his deep gaze cutting through the crowd and landing precisely on me. That gaze was calm and ripple-free, yet it carried a sharpness unique to the military, as if it could freeze a person's soul. The moment our eyes met, all the grievances, waiting, self-consolation, and absurdity of the past 4 years were like a giant bubble gently popped by his calm glance. Why? Why did my love have to be sacrificed time and time again for his career? Why did my dignity have to be trampled under his feet so recklessly? An unprecedented impulse, mixed with absolute despair, surged violently from the bottom of my heart. I ignored Jason's hesitant breathing on the other end of the line, looked at the phone screen, and pressed the red end call button. Then I took a step forward, cutting through the crowd of people casting sympathetic or curious glances my way, and walked step by step until I stood right in front of the man in the military uniform. I met his inquiring gaze, my throat a little dry, and used all the strength in my body to hoarsely ask a question that even I thought was pure madness. Are you willing? He remained silent for 2 seconds. Those deep eyes looked at me quietly, as if confirming I wasn't making a joke. The air around us seemed to freeze. I could even hear my own heart hammering against my ribs. Just when I thought he would treat me like a lunatic and turn to flee this absurd scene, his thin lips parted, and he gave a steady nod. Yes. One word. Clean, crisp, and resolute. 10 minutes later, when 2 freshly printed marriage certificates carrying the scent of fresh ink were handed to us by the clerk, I still felt like I was in a dream. Walking out the doors of the municipal building, the afternoon sun was blinding, making it hard to keep my eyes open. The edges of the certificates in my hand caught the sunlight and felt almost burning to the touch, leaving an absurd yet resolute mark on my 26 years of life. My name is Clara Vance. I am an art conservator. My job is to converse with imperfections and time, using the utmost patience to mend cracks and recover lost eras. But my own life had shattered into a floor full of porcelain shards that couldn't be picked up. Beside me, the man who had just become my legal husband was named Connor Hayes. Aside from this name and the sharp, eagle-like photo on his military ID card, I knew absolutely nothing about him. He was more than a head taller than me. The crisp army dress uniform he wore didn't have a single wrinkle, making him look like an unsheathed sword. His steps were steady as he walked, each pace seemingly measured with a ruler, forming a sharp contrast with my slightly hurried steps and high heels. A suffocating awkwardness filled the air. We were like two unfamiliar actors forced together, performing an absurdist play that didn't even have a script. Clara. He spoke first, his voice deep and carrying a penetrative quality unique to soldiers. This address made me a little dazed. I stopped and looked up at him. Under the sunlight, his skin was a healthy bronze, and fine beads of sweat dotted his temples, but his eyes remained calm. "Yes, Connor?" I replied, mirroring his formal tone. He seemed briefly amused by my response, but his face showed no expression. He simply took out a square tactical wallet from his pocket, pulled out a debit card, and handed it to me. "This is my USAA salary account. The PIN is 6 zeros. From now on, my pay will be deposited here on the 1st of every month. Take it and buy whatever the house needs." I froze, instinctively stepping back to avoid the card he was offering. "No need. I have a job. It's protocol," he cut me off, his tone allowing no argument. "A military spouse has the right to manage the household finances." He paused, then pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. "Also, this is my phone number and my base mailing address. I might be on deployment and unable to use my phone for long periods. If there's an emergency, you can contact my direct command through this address." He shoved the card and the paper into my hand together, his movements clean and decisive, giving me no room to refuse. I pinched the cold plastic card and the warm slip of paper, my fingertips trembling slightly. This didn't feel like a marriage. It felt more like a supply transfer. He was issuing his identity and his financial resources to me like military gear. I opened my mouth, wanting to ask, "Do you just trust me like this? A total stranger?" I also wanted to ask, "What do we do now?" Countless questions blocked my throat, but I couldn't bring myself to ask a single one. Right at that moment, the cell phone in his pocket let out a short vibration. He answered it quickly, saying only 2 words. "Copy that." He hung up immediately. He looked at me, and for the first time, there was an emotion in his eyes that I could read. "Apology. I'm sorry. Emergency orders. I have to return to base immediately." I nodded, actually feeling a sense of relief. "Your address?" he asked. I gave him the name of my apartment complex. He nodded, as if memorizing a map. "Got it. When I get back, I'll process your military-dependent paperwork. Take care of yourself in the meantime." After saying that, he gave me a crisp salute, turned, and walked away. No hug. No goodbye. Not even a single unnecessary greeting. He just merged into the crowd with those firm steps, his tall and straight back quickly disappearing around the street corner. I stood there alone, holding an unfamiliar debit card and a marriage certificate, feeling like a joke. Jason Sterling, my ex-fiancé. We dated for 4 years, and he never once disclosed his financial situation to me. But Connor Hayes, this man I had known for less than an hour, handed his entire net worth over to me. A massive sense of unreality enveloped me. I looked down at the photo of us side by side on the marriage certificate. In the picture, my eyes were red and swollen, my expression bewildered, while he maintained that same calm demeanor, as if a mountain could collapse in front of him and his expression wouldn't change. I suddenly realized that from beginning to end, he never asked me why I was at the county clerk's office alone. He also never asked me why I agreed to his absurd proposal. He seemed to just be executing a mission, and I happened to be the mission objective. My phone rang again at the worst possible moment. The name still jumping on the screen was Jason Sterling. Looking at this name, the grievance and anger that had been fiercely suppressed for 4 years finally found an outlet. I swiped to answer. Before he could speak, I used all my strength to articulate every single word clearly. "Jason, congratulations. You are free. I got married. Just now." Dead silence fell over the other end of the line. Even Jason's habitual, steady breathing disappeared. I could imagine him sitting in his massive executive chair right now, his brows tightly furrowed, that perpetually unhurried face, cracking for the very first time. This imagination brought a twisted sense of pleasure to my heart. Clara, stop messing around. After a long time, he finally spoke, his voice carrying a trace of imperceptible exhaustion and indulgence, as if comforting an unreasonable child. I know you're angry. It's my fault. That acquisition deal really is important. You know that. It's our firm's biggest project this year. Once I'm done with this busy period, I'll properly make it up to you. I'll take you on a trip to Aspen, okay? His voice coming through the static was still gentle, but it made me feel physically nauseous. This again. Every time he made a mistake, he used this condescending, charity-like compensation to shut my mouth. He never thought he was wrong. He only felt that I was being immature, that my emotions were delaying his important business. Jason, I calmly interrupted him. I am not joking. The marriage certificate is in my hand right now. Do you want to see a picture? The other end fell silent again. This time, the silence lasted longer. So long that I thought he had hung up. With who? His voice turned cold, like cracked ice. A soldier, I said. He let out a short, cold laugh, full of disdain. Clara Vance, you really will go to any lengths just to make me mad. Grabbing a random person at City Hall to marry. Do you think this is playing house? Do you even know what this means? Of course I know. I looked at the certificate in my hand, the state seal officially stamped and serious. It means that from today on, I am Connor Hayes' legal wife, protected by the law. And you, Jason, there is nothing left between you and me. After saying that, I didn't give him another chance to speak. I hung up the phone decisively and added his number to the block list. The world was finally quiet. I dragged my exhausted body back to my rented apartment. Opening the door, everything in the house was still exactly as it was last night. For today's registration, I had specifically taken a day off, cleaned the apartment until it was spotless, and arranged fresh lilies in a vase. On the dining table, there was even a couple's cake I had baked myself, meant to celebrate tonight. Now, looking at it, it all felt like a giant mockery. I walked over, expressionless, and dumped the entire cake into the trash can, along with the bouquet of lilies that symbolized a lifetime of love. Then, I started packing up the things Jason had left here. Not much, just a few changes of clothes, a razor, and a few professional books he would never read. In our 4 years of dating, the number of times he stayed here could be counted on one hand, always coming and going in a rush. I packed all his things into a cardboard box, called a FedEx same-day courier, and shipped it directly to his firm. I knew the address by heart. After all, half of my own blood and sweat went into that company. In the early days of his startup, I stayed up countless nights with him. I used the savings I accumulated from my restoration work to help him get through his toughest cash flow crises. But once Apex Venture Capital got on track, the use he used to talk about quietly turned into me. After finishing all this, I collapsed onto the sofa as if all my strength had been drained. Only at this moment did the delayed panic wash over me like a tide. I was married. To a man I had only met once. I didn't even know how old he was, where he was from, what he liked to eat, or what his hobbies were. I only knew his name was Connor Hayes, and he was in the army. This marriage was like a giant mystery box. I didn't know if opening it would bring a pleasant surprise or a complete shock. I took out my phone and, as if possessed, typed the words, military marriage, into the search bar. The screen populated with dense entries. Sacred. Loyal. Sacrifice. Long distances. Living apart. Special duties and responsibilities. Every single word felt like a heavy stone pressing on my heart. Could I, Clara Vance, someone used to a routine life in my own precise little world, really shoulder all of this? Just as my imagination was running wild, the doorbell suddenly rang. I thought it was the courier coming back for the package and opened the door without thinking. But standing outside was Jason Sterling. His face was livid, his eyes bloodshot, and his custom-tailored suit was somewhat disheveled. He had completely lost his usual elite corporate demeanor. He pushed the door open and barged in, his gaze sweeping across the empty room before finally landing on the trash can next to my hand. His favorite razor was lying in there. Clara, have you played enough? He grabbed my wrist, his grip terrifyingly strong. Come with me to City Hall right now and annul this absurd marriage. Then we're going to register. His grip hurt, and I struggled fiercely. Jason, let me go. I told you we are finished. Finished? I didn't agree, so it can't be finished. His red eyes looked like a cornered, enraged beast. Who is that man? Where is he? Tell me. I'll give him money to get lost. However much you want, I'll give it to you. His words were like a poison-laced knife plunging ruthlessly into my heart. In his eyes, everything could be measured with money, including my marriage, my character. I was trembling with rage. I raised my hand and used all my strength to slap him across the face. Smack! The crisp sound echoed in the quiet room. Jason's head snapped to the side from the force, an expression of sheer disbelief appearing on his face. Get out. I pointed at the door, my voice cold as ice. Get out of my world completely. He covered his face, staring at me fixedly, his eyes as complex as a web. There was anger, unwillingness, and a trace of hurt I couldn't understand. He had probably never imagined that I, always so docile, would ever raise a hand against him. During the standoff, my phone rang again. It was an unfamiliar local number. I pressed answer and put it on speaker. A gentle yet authoritative female voice came through. Hello, is this Miss Clara Vance? I am Connor Hayes' mother. I am Connor Hayes' mother. These words were like a depth charge detonating in my chaotic brain. Jason's fury, my own grievances, the absurdity of my flash marriage, were all instantly blown away by the sudden arrival of this unexpected mother-in-law. I almost immediately broke free from Jason's restraint. Gripping the phone, my body involuntarily stood at attention, as if the person on the other end could actually see me. Hello, ma'am. My voice was a little tight, and even I could hear the guilt and nervousness in it. Jason froze, the strength in his grip loosening. He frowned, looking at me with a scrutinizing gaze, seemingly trying to determine if I was acting. The lady on the other end paused, seeming to weigh her words. Her tone remained gentle but carried an unquestionable power. We just received notice from the base command that Connor registered his marriage today. His father and I happen to be in the city right now. We would like to meet you. Is that convenient? My mind went completely blank. Meet the parents? How could I meet the parents looking like this? And Jason was still here. I shot a pleading look at Jason, hoping he would have the sense to leave. But not only did he not leave, he crossed his arms and leaned against the wall with a look that said he was watching a good show, seemingly certain I wouldn't be able to wrap this up. Convenient, ma'am. It's just that I have a little something to take care of right now. It might have to be a bit later. I tried to make my voice sound as steady as possible. That's all right. We will wait for you. Send us your address, and we'll come to you. The other party's tone was crisp and decisive, giving me absolutely no room to negotiate. Hanging up the phone, I felt like I was about to collapse. What kind of situation was this? Marrying a stranger in the morning, and facing his parents dropping from the sky in the afternoon. Jason finally spoke, his tone full of mockery. What? Can't keep the act going? Clara, you really make me see you in a new light. You would even tell this kind of lie just to get revenge on me. What? Are you going to hire 2 background actors to play your in-laws next? I couldn't be bothered to argue with him anymore. The most pressing matter right now was how to handle Connor's parents. I took a deep breath, walked up to Jason, opened the door, and made a gesture for him to leave. Mr. Sterling, you do not need to worry about my family affairs. Please leave immediately. I do not want my elders to see irrelevant people in my home. Irrelevant people? Jason was stung by these words. He took a step forward, backing me up. Clara, our 4 years together, and in your eyes it becomes irrelevant? Tell me, does this guy named Connor know you? Does he know you're allergic to UV rays and can't be in the sun for long periods? Does he know you need absolute silence when you're restoring artifacts? Does he know your stomach is bad and you can't eat spicy food? With every question he asked, my heart sank a fraction. True, Connor knew none of this. Aside from those 2 marriage certificates, everything between us was a blank slate. But the fact that Jason knew all this became the very capital he used to hurt me time and time again. He knew I needed silence. Yet he brought his buddies over to throw a party when I was rushing my most intense restoration project. He knew my stomach was bad, yet he always called me in the middle of the night after getting drunk at business dinners, making me go out and eat spicy late-night food to keep him company. He knew everything about me, but he never truly respected me. Enough, I interrupted him, my eyes cold. He doesn't know now, but he will know in the future. But you, Jason, you never truly wanted to know. In your heart, there is only your career, your ambition, your acquisition deals. My words were like a key, unlocking the floodgates of his emotions. The mockery in his eyes faded, replaced by an almost crazed obsession. Who do you think I do all this for, Clara? It's for our future. Do you think the business world is a dinner party? One wrong step and I'm ruined. The investor I met today can decide the life and death of our firm for the next 5 years. Compared to that, is registering our marriage one day later really that important? It is important. I looked into his eyes and enunciated every word. It's not more important than your career, but it is more important than my dignity. Jason, you made me wait 4 times. Every time felt like a public execution. You left me hanging at City Hall alone, letting everyone treat me like a joke. In your heart, is my dignity worth absolutely nothing? Jason's lips moved, but he couldn't say a word. Just then, a knock came from the door. My heart skipped a beat. It had to be Connor's parents. I bypassed Jason, who was frozen in place, and ran to open the door. Standing outside was a middle-aged couple with an extraordinary aura. The man wore a crisp, white button-down shirt. His frame was lean but standing straight, and his brow bore a resemblance to Connor, carrying the commanding presence of someone who had held high authority for a long time. The woman wore a simple, elegant dress, her hair impeccably styled. Though she had fine lines around her eyes, she still possessed a striking grace. She looked at me with a scrutinizing but not unkind gaze. "Hello, sir, ma'am." My palms were sweating from nervousness. Connor's mother, Eleanor, looked past me, and her gaze landed on Jason standing behind me. She frowned imperceptibly. "This gentleman is?" Before I could explain, Jason had already adjusted his expression, voluntarily reaching out his hand and revealing his signature, corporate elite smile. "Hello, sir, ma'am. I am Clara's friend, Jason Sterling. I heard she got married today, so I specifically came over to congratulate her." He deliberately emphasized the word friend, his posture flawless, acting both like a close friend coming to offer blessings and subtly exuding a sense of claiming territory. Connor's father, General Hayes, didn't shake his hand. He simply shot him a mild glance, a gaze so sharp it seemed to pierce straight through a person's soul. He spoke in a deep voice. "Our family affairs do not require Mr. Sterling's concern." One sentence drew a clear boundary with Jason, leaving his extended hand hanging awkwardly in midair. Jason's face instantly flushed. He had probably never been rejected to his face so cleanly and decisively outside of a boardroom. The unyielding aura surrounding General Hayes was something Jason's capital-built elite persona could never compare to. "Mom, Dad, please come in." I quickly stepped aside, inviting the 2 elders inside. Eleanor walked in, her gaze sweeping rapidly around the room. When she saw the cardboard box on the coffee table where I had carelessly tossed Jason's belongings, her eyes paused, but she said nothing. "The house is a bit messy. I haven't had time to clean up. Please have a seat." I frantically went to pour water, my heart pounding. Jason stood by the door, not leaving, but not staying comfortably either. General Hayes turned to look at him, his tone flat but carrying an irresistible command. "Mr. Sterling, we want to have a private family chat with our daughter-in-law. It's probably inconvenient for you to be here, is it not?" This was an eviction order, a naked eviction order leaving absolutely no room for negotiation. Jason's pride had clearly been severely challenged. He took a deep breath and looked at me, his eyes carrying a final trace of hope. "Clara." "Jason, please leave." I didn't look at him, keeping my head down as I placed the water glasses on the coffee table. My absolute resolve became the final straw that broke him. He finally dropped his disguise, a trace of ferocity flashing across his face. He stared at me dead on for a few seconds, then turned around without a word and slammed the door heavily behind him. That loud crash felt like the final rest on the sheet music of my 4-year relationship with him. The room finally quieted down. I stood in place, like a prisoner awaiting trial. "Sit down, child." Eleanor patted the sofa next to her, her tone softening a bit. I sat down obediently, my body tense as a bowstring. "I read your file." General Hayes spoke first. His way of speaking was just like his son's, direct and without any prelude. "Art conservator. A very good job. Parents were teachers. Good family upbringing. You are a good girl." This sudden affirmation caught me off guard. I looked up at him. "But," he pivoted, his eyes becoming serious, "your union with Connor was too hasty." My heart instantly sank to the bottom. "A military marriage is not a game," he continued, his voice not loud, but every word carrying massive weight. "It's not just the union of 2 people, but the union of 2 families, and even the individual and the country. Connor's position is special. His spouse must be someone who can understand him, support him, and independently bear the heavy burdens of the household. Are you mentally prepared for this?" I bit my lip, unable to answer. I wasn't prepared. Not at all. I didn't even know which specific unit Connor belonged to or what missions he executed. Eleanor looked at my pale face and took over the conversation, her tone much gentler. Child, we are not here to scold you. Connor has always had his own mind since he was young. Once he decides something, wild horses couldn't drag him away. He chose you, and he definitely has his reasons. We just want you to understand what you'll have to face by marrying him. She paused and sighed. Being apart more than being together is the norm. Seeing each other once or twice a year is considered good. You'll have to shoulder all the big and small matters at home alone. When he's on a mission, there will be zero communication. You won't even know if he's alive or dead. You can only wait. This kind of life is very hard. I listened quietly, the images already floating before my eyes. Eating alone, going to the doctor alone, facing an empty room deep in the night, waiting for a phone call that I didn't know when would come. Was that man just now your ex-boyfriend? Eleanor asked suddenly. I nodded, feeling somewhat embarrassed. It's obvious you two had deep feelings, she said. Marrying Connor today, was it a moment of impulse, or have you truly thought it through? I had asked myself this question the entire way back. Impulsive? Of course it was impulsive, but did I regret it? I thought of Jason's entitled face. I thought of that cold acquisition deal he talked about. I thought of the scenes where I waited like an idiot at City Hall time and time again. In that moment, all my love for him had been worn down to nothing. Marrying Connor might be a massive gamble, but continuing to be with Jason was a guaranteed descent into hell. I raised my head, meeting Eleanor's scrutinizing gaze, took a deep breath, and said words that surprised even myself. Ma'am, it was an impulse, but I do not regret it. From the moment I got the marriage certificate, I was prepared. No matter how hard it gets in the future, I will wait for him to come back. When I said the words, I will wait for him to come back, I even stunned myself for a second. That sentence felt like it didn't pass through my brain, but flowed naturally from the deepest part of my heart. Perhaps the moment I decided to marry Connor, a certain kind of promise had already taken root inside me. After hearing my words, General Hayes and Eleanor exchanged a glance, both seeing a trace of surprise in each other's eyes. The lines on General Hayes's strict face seemed to soften a bit. He pondered for a moment and said, Good. Since you say so, then we respect your choice. From today on, you are the daughter-in-law of the Hayes family. In the future, if you suffer any grievances, the family will back you up. The family will back you up. These simple words were like a warm current, instantly washing away the strength I had faked all day. From the disappointment of receiving Jason's call in the morning, to the absurdity of the flash marriage, and then to the anger of being confronted at my door by Jason, I had kept my nerves strung tight like a hedgehog, ready for battle. But at this moment, in front of this mother-in-law I was meeting for only the second time, all my defenses dropped. My eyes grew hot, and I nearly shed tears. I quickly lowered my head and blinked rapidly to force the sourness back down. Thank you, Mom, Dad, I called out softly. Saying these two titles out loud felt a little unfamiliar and shy even to myself. A genuine smile finally appeared on Eleanor's face. That smile was gentle and maternal. She reached over and held my hand, patting it lightly. Good child. We're family from now on. Connor's parents didn't stay long. After getting my promise and confirming my current living situation was secure, General Hayes received a phone call. An old military buddy in the area wanted to meet up, and the two of them got up to leave. Before leaving, Eleanor held my hand, slipped a smooth, vintage Tiffany & Co. diamond bracelet off her own wrist, and placed it onto my wrist without allowing me to argue. This bracelet was passed down from Connor's grandmother. It should have been given to you a long time ago. Take it as Mom's welcome gift to you. The bracelet was of exquisite quality, cold to the touch but warming quickly against the skin, clearly priceless. I hurriedly tried to decline. Mom, this is too expensive. I can't take it. We're family now. There's no need for that. Eleanor pressed my hand down, refusing to let me reject it. Treat our home like your own from now on. If anything comes up, call us anytime. After seeing the two elders out, I closed the door, leaned against it, and let out a long sigh. The diamond bracelet on my wrist was heavy, reminding me that none of this was a dream. I really was married, and I had acquired a pair of very reasonable, hardcore in-laws. My life had completely turned upside down in a single day. The following few days were unexpectedly peaceful. Jason didn't come to harass me again, probably intimidated by General Hayes's imposing aura. Or perhaps he had finally accepted reality. I poured all my energy into my work. The American Heritage Museum where I worked was preparing for an important early American art exhibition. The project I was responsible for restoring was an extremely precious 18th century colonial American terracotta jug. When this jug was excavated, it had already shattered into over a dozen pieces, the clay body covered in hairline fractures. The restoration difficulty was immense. In the studio, wearing a lab coat, mask, and safety goggles, I held a tiny brush dipped in a specialized adhesive, carefully applying it along the edges of the shards. The formula for the adhesive was something I had concocted after consulting numerous historical texts and running dozens of experiments. It maximized the strength of the bond without causing secondary damage to the terracotta. This process required absolute focus. My breathing was incredibly light. The entire world seemed to shrink down to the terracotta jug in front of me. Its surface was covered in a fine network of cracks, shimmering faintly under the lights. I felt like I could look through these fractures and see the moment it was born in a colonial kiln centuries ago, and the marks of it being handled in an early American home. This feeling of conversing with ancient souls brought me immense peace and satisfaction. Only in these moments could I temporarily forget the messy trivialities of real life. Clara, entering a Zen state again? My colleague Sarah walked over with a cup of coffee, teasing me softly. Your skills are really godlike. These few pieces are glued together seamlessly. If I didn't know it was broken, I would really think it was pristine. I smiled, took off my safety goggles, and rubbed my slightly sore eyes. Still a long way to go. The hardest part of restoring terracotta is matching the color and the patina. The new fill has to blend perfectly with the original clay. The color difference can't exceed a fraction of a percent. That's the real test. A fraction of a percent? My God, that requires pixel-level eyesight. Sarah clicked her tongue. Only a detail-obsessed freak like you could pull that off. I was about to speak when my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar local number. I walked over to the break area and answered the call. A polite but distant voice came through. Hello, is this Miss Clara Vance? This is Apex Venture Capital, Mr. Sterling's secretary. Mr. Sterling would like to schedule a meeting with you to discuss buying out your original founder shares in the company. Original founder shares. Those words pricked me like a needle. Back when Jason started the firm, not only did I drain all my savings, but I also used a small apartment left to me by my parents, mortgaging it at a steep discount to buy into the company as equity. At the time, he made it sound beautiful. It was our company, and I was his most important shareholder and partner. But now, he wanted to process me. I don't have time, I coldly refused. Miss Vance. The secretary's tone remained polite, but the implicit threat was obvious. Mr. Sterling says this matter concerns your major personal interests. If you do not come over today, the company will initiate a forced buyout at the lowest market valuation. You will bear all consequences yourself. He was forcing me, using the blood and sweat I valued most to force me to bow my head. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. That small apartment was the only keepsake my mother left me. I couldn't let him steal it without a fight. Address, I said. Half an hour later, I appeared downstairs at Apex Venture Capital. The firm was located in the most bustling CBD in the city center. The grand glass facade sparkled in the sunlight. All of this was worlds apart from the small team crammed into a rundown office building in my memory. Walking into Jason's office, he was standing with his back to me, looking out the massive floor-to-ceiling windows at the busy traffic below. You came. He didn't turn around. His voice was cold. Have a seat. I didn't sit. Just stood where I was. What do you want to talk about? He turned around, tossed a document onto the desk, and pointed at it. Sign it. That property of yours. I'll evaluate it at double the market price. Cash or equivalent shares, take your pick. From now on, you have absolutely nothing to do with this company. I walked over and picked up the equity transfer agreement. Double market price. The terms were so generous it bordered on insulting. He thought money could erase everything. What if I don't sign? I asked. Don't sign? He smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. Clara, stop being naive. Do you think you're still the queen bee of this company? Let me tell you, this company's last name is Sterling, not Vance. Without my approval, the shares in your hand are just a pile of waste paper. You won't get a single cent. I'm offering you these terms today out of consideration for our past relationship. Don't reject a generous offer. Past relationship? I felt like I was hearing the biggest joke in the world. Jason Sterling, You are talking to me about past relationships? Right then, the office door was pushed open. A heavily made-up woman swayed in, holding a cup of coffee. She said in a sickly sweet voice, "Jason, your coffee." She paused when she saw me, then revealed a provocative smile. It was his new secretary, the woman who had threatened me on the phone. She placed the coffee on Jason's desk, her body intentionally or unintentionally pressing close to him, looking at me with a posture declaring ownership. I understood. This wasn't just a business negotiation, it was a carefully orchestrated humiliation. He wanted me to watch with my own eyes how easily he could replace me, both in career and in romance. I was shaking with anger. I grabbed the agreement on the desk and was about to tear it up. Just as my hand touched the paper, my phone rang again. It was the same unfamiliar local number. I frowned and answered, thinking it was the secretary calling again from her desk. But a deep, familiar voice came through the line, carrying a trace of imperceptible exhaustion and hoarseness. "Clara, it's me, Connor." Connor's voice was like a thunderclap, piercing through the tense air in the office and landing precisely in my ear. My whole body froze. Wasn't he on a mission where he couldn't use his phone? "Why are you—" I instinctively lowered my voice, almost to a whisper. In the office, both Jason and his new secretary looked at me with surprised expressions. Jason's brows knitted tightly, seemingly trying to guess who was on the other end of the line. "I'm at Washington Memorial Hospital, orthopedics ward, 15th floor. A minor issue. Can you come over?" His voice was calm, revealing no emotion. But the word orthopedics still made my heart violently clench. "You're hurt?" I raised my volume, completely forgetting where I was. Jason's face instantly darkened, his sharp gaze fixed on my phone. "Minor injury. Just a scrape," Connor said lightly, but then added, "However, processing the inpatient admission requires a family member's signature." The term family member once again reminded me of the absurd yet legally protected relationship between us. "I'll be right there," I said without any hesitation. Hanging up the phone, I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. "Stop!" Jason shouted sternly. "Clara, we are not done talking." I stopped, turned back, and looked at him coldly. "Jason, from today on, your business has nothing to do with me, and you have no right to interfere in my business either. As for this agreement, I'll have my lawyer talk to you." After saying that, I didn't look at his stunned face again and walked briskly out of the office. Behind me came the sound of a glass shattering and that woman's scream. But I didn't care anymore. I sprinted downstairs, hailed a cab by the street, and headed straight for Washington Memorial Hospital. In the car, my heart was beating rapidly, my mind a mess. How badly was he hurt? Orthopedics, did he break a bone? Wasn't he on a mission? How did he get injured? Countless questions swirled in my mind, making me anxious. I suddenly realized that I actually felt a genuine trace of worry for this husband in name only. Arriving at the hospital, I followed the address he gave me and found the orthopedics ward on the 15th floor. In a double room at the end of the hall, I saw Connor. He had changed into a blue and white striped hospital gown. His left arm was in a sling strapped to his chest, and his face had a few fine scratches. He looked a bit pale, but his spirits seemed decent. He was sitting on the hospital bed, playing chess with an older gentleman in a matching gown. Seeing me, he paused, then said to the older man, "Sir, my family is here. Let's pause for today." "Oh, all right. Your wife is very pretty," the older man said cheerfully as he packed up the chessboard. Being called his wife made my face flush hot. I walked somewhat unnaturally to the side of the bed. "How are you? Where are you hurt?" I asked urgently. "It's nothing," he pointed at his left arm. "Dislocated. But they popped it back in. Just some superficial cuts. I'll be fine after a few days of rest." Watching him act so nonchalant made a sudden, inexplicable burst of anger flare up inside me. "Dislocated is nothing? Do you know how much a dislocation hurts? What did the doctor say? How long do you need to be hospitalized?" My rapid-fire questions caught him off guard. He raised those deep eyes and looked at me quietly for a few seconds. There was something in his gaze that I couldn't read. The doctor recommended observing for 2 days. "I have a mild concussion." He paused, adding, "This was a training exercise, not a combat deployment. An accident. So, it was an exercise." I breathed a sigh of relief, but my anger hadn't faded. "Even in an exercise, can you guys really be so careless?" Before I could finish, the hospital room door opened. A young man in an army uniform walked in carrying a thermos. Seeing me, he froze for a second, then immediately stood at attention and saluted Connor. "Captain!" Then he turned to me, saluting again, his voice booming. "Good afternoon, ma'am. I am the captain's orderly, Private First Class Miller." Being called ma'am made my scalp tingle, and my cheeks instantly turned crimson. Connor coughed, waving his hand at him. "Enough. Put the stuff down and head back for now." "Yes, sir." PFC Miller set the thermos down, smiled at me, revealing bright white teeth. "Ma'am, I am leaving the captain in your care. He's stubborn. He gets hurt and acts like it's nothing. Please talk some sense into him." After saying that, he saluted again and dashed out like a gust of wind. Only the two of us were left in the room. The atmosphere was even more awkward than at the entrance of City Hall. Have you eaten?" I asked, trying to find something to say, pointing at the thermos. "Not yet." I walked over and opened the thermos. Inside was chicken noodle soup and a few light sides. I scooped a bowl and handed it to him. "The doctor said you might have a concussion. You should eat something light." He looked at me, then looked down at his left arm in the sling, saying nothing. I then realized that with one hand incapacitated, it was inconvenient. I can feed you?" The moment I said it, I wanted to bite my tongue off. The atmosphere instantly solidified. I held the bowl, my hand hovering in midair, unable to advance or retreat. Connor's ears seemed to turn a suspicious shade of red. He remained silent for a few seconds, then used his perfectly fine right hand to take the bowl. "No need, I can do it myself." He lowered his head, awkwardly eating the soup with one hand, his movements a bit clumsy. I watched his resolute profile and his tightly pressed lips. A strange emotion suddenly welled up inside me. This man, this husband I had flash married. He was strong and tough, but he also had a clumsy and vulnerable side. Just then, my phone rang. I pulled it out to look. It was an unfamiliar number. The caller ID showed it was local. Assuming it was Jason's people again, I answered it impatiently. "Hello? Is this Clara Vance?" An arrogant and domineering voice came through the line. "I am Jason's girlfriend. I am warning you to stay away from Jason. A dumped woman like you should stop having wishful thoughts. He is my man now." The phone was on speaker. The room was very quiet, and every word clearly reached Connor's ears. I was about to explode with anger when Connor suddenly looked up and extended his uninjured right hand toward me. "Give me the phone." His voice was cold as ice. I froze, instinctively handing the phone to him. Connor took the phone, held it to his ear, and spoke. His voice was not loud, but it carried a chilling, oppressive weight. "Who is this?" The woman on the other end clearly didn't expect a man's voice. Her arrogant attitude instantly shrank by half. Who are you?" "I'm looking for Clara. I am her husband." Connor enunciated every word, each syllable dropping like stones on a sheet of ice. "I don't care what relationship you have with this Jason person, but if you dare to harass my wife with this tone again, I'll use my methods to make sure you and the people behind you pay the price for every single word you said today." His voice was calm. No yelling, no overt threats. But that aura of ruthless authority, honed through years of intense combat, instantly transmitted through the signal. The other end fell dead silent. A few seconds later, there was the panicked sound of a dial tone. Connor handed the phone back to me, lowered his head, and continued eating his soup, as if nothing had just happened. I, however, was a tangled mess. He had stood up for me, defended me, and this gave me an unprecedented sense of security. But at the same time, having him crash straight into the messy aftermath of Jason made me feel incredibly embarrassed and ashamed. "I'm sorry," I said softly. "I caused trouble for you." His movement with the spoon paused. He looked up at me. "You are not at fault. There is no need to apologize. The person who harassed you is in the wrong." His gaze was clear and firm, as if stating an absolute truth of the universe. I looked at him, suddenly realizing that although this man was not good with words, he possessed the most fundamental and righteous sense of right and wrong. That Jason person. He seemed to be weighing his words. "Is he your ex-boyfriend? Ex-fiancé?" I smiled bitterly, deciding to hide nothing. "We were supposed to get our marriage license that day. He stood me up for the 4th time, and then I ran into you at City Hall." I spoke very calmly, as if narrating someone else's story. Connor listened quietly, offering no opinions, simply silently finishing the soup in his bowl. Once finished, he handed the empty bowl to me. I walked over to take it, but he suddenly spoke. "You still have financial entanglements with him." I hadn't expected him to listen so closely. He had even caught my phrase, Let my lawyer talk to you. I nodded. Yes, some equity issues. Do you need my help? He asked. No, I immediately refused. This is my own business. I can handle it. I didn't want to cause him more trouble, and I especially didn't want him to think I married him just to find a backer to deal with my ex. He looked at me deeply, didn't insist, and just said, okay, but if you need it, just ask. You are a military spouse. The military can provide JAG legal assistance for your lawful rights. A military spouse again. This identity was like a heavy brand, constantly reminding me that my life was already tightly bound to this man and his world. For the next 2 days, I took time off to take care of him at the hospital. I say take care, but there wasn't much I could do. He was very independent, handling most things himself. All I could do was bring him food every day, talk to him, and watch the nurses change his dressings. Our dynamic was very strange. We didn't seem like a married couple, nor like friends. We were more like two roommates arranged to live under the same roof, polite and distant, yet cautiously testing each other's boundaries. I would tell him interesting things I encountered while restoring artifacts, like attaching a handle to a terracotta jug, only to discover later that the handle was added by a later generation and didn't belong to the jug at all. He listened very attentively, occasionally asking a question or two. How do you determine what it originally looked like? He would also occasionally tell me things about the base, but always brushing over them quickly, like how grueling the ruck marches were, or how good the mess hall burgers were. He never mentioned the details of his missions. It was protocol. It was through PFC Miller that I found out Connor got injured saving a new recruit. During the live fire exercise, the recruit's operational error caused a demolition charge to detonate early. To push him away, Connor was thrown by the blast wave, resulting in the dislocated shoulder. In the eyes of Miller and the other soldiers who came to visit him, Connor was a godlike captain. He was calm, decisive, always charging at the front, the backbone of everyone. But in my eyes, he was just an ordinary man who would get his mouth dirty drinking soup, whose lips would twitch slightly at the jokes I told, and whose brows would furrow tightly when he slept. The day he was discharged, I went to process his paperwork. He insisted on doing it himself, saying he couldn't keep spending my money. In front of the billing counter, we had our first argument since getting married over who would pay the hospital bill. Ultimately, I couldn't out-stubborn him, and could only watch as he awkwardly used his perfectly fine right hand to sign his name on the receipt. Let me drive you back to base, I said. No need, he declined. Base transport is coming to pick me up. You should go back to the museum. Don't delay your work. He paused, pulling a set of keys from his pocket and handing them to me. These are for my assigned officer housing. It's not far from your museum. I've already filed the paperwork. Once your dependent status is processed, you can move in. I took the cold keys, my heart a mix of complex emotions. He seemed to sense my hesitation and added, Don't feel pressured. If you don't want to move, that's fine too. It's just safer there. I understood what he meant. Base housing could at least completely block harassment from people like Jason. Okay. I accepted the keys. The military vehicle arrived right on time. Connor got in, rolled down the window, said to me, I'm leaving, and had no extra words. I stood there, watching the green tactical vehicle disappear into the traffic, feeling an emptiness in my heart. I thought our next meeting would be in the distant, unforeseeable future. But unexpectedly, 3 days later, I received a call I never saw coming. It was my lawyer, Miss Vance. Apex Venture Capital suddenly caved. They not only agreed to all the equity swap conditions you proposed, but they also added an extra 5% cash compensation as damages for emotional distress. Attorney Brooks's voice was full of surprise and confusion. I've been practicing for years, and I have never seen a counterparty cave so fast. Did you get some heavy hitter to step in for you? The lawyer's words left me entirely stunned. Heavy hitter? I repeated blankly. Yeah. The lawyer sounded extremely excited. Apex's legal team was stonewalling us just yesterday, refusing to yield an inch. Today, it was like they were entirely different people. They accepted all our terms unconditionally. They were practically begging us on their knees to sign. I fished around for info, and the other side only said they received orders from the brass. Miss Vance, your heavy hitter has serious pull. Heavy hitter? The only person I could think of was Connor, but he was just an army captain. How could he possibly exert such massive influence over a prominent local venture capital firm? Furthermore, he had promised me he wouldn't interfere in this matter. Hanging up, my mind was clouded with suspicion. I immediately sent a text to Connor's orderly, Miller, asking if it was a good time for Connor to take a call. Miller quickly replied, "Ma'am, the captain is in an important briefing. He might take a while to get back to you." I typed out a line. "Did you tell him about my company's situation?" But feeling it was inappropriate, I deleted it. How should I ask? Ask if he went behind my back and used connections. That would make me seem too untrusting of him. I ultimately just replied, "Okay, thank you." Carrying a belly full of doubts, I returned to my studio at the museum. The restoration of the colonial American terracotta jug had entered the most critical color-matching phase. I needed to meticulously apply the mixed pigments into the bonded seams, ensuring the new color blended flawlessly with the ancient clay. This was a process that severely tested one's eyesight and patience. I put on my specialized magnifying visor, held a custom micropipette, and injected the pigment, thinner than a strand of hair, drop by drop into the cracks. I slowed my breathing and heart rate to the absolute minimum, entering a state bordering on Zen meditation. Any slight external distraction could ruin all the previous work. However, today, no matter what I did, I couldn't calm my mind. The lawyer's words, Jason's abnormal behavior, and Connor's unflappable face wove into a massive net in my mind. Hiss, my hand trembled slightly, and a drop of pigment went off target, landing on the pristine original surface. I gasped, immediately put down the pipette, grabbed a cotton swab dipped in a special solvent, and carefully wiped it away. Fortunately, I caught it in time, and it left no mark, but I knew my state of mind was off. I took off the visor, leaned back in my chair, and closed my eyes wearily. Just then, a knock came at the studio door. My mentor, Professor Harrison, the most authoritative conservation expert at the museum, walked in. "Clara, what's wrong? You look distracted today," Professor Harrison asked with concern. "I'm fine, Professor." I forced a smile. Professor Harrison looked at the jug on the table, then at me, and sighed. "Your hands are the eyes of an art conservator, but your heart is the soul of those hands. If the heart is a mess, the hands lose their fire and their soul." He patted my shoulder. "Go, take a break. Adjust your state of mind before coming back. This jug can wait. It has waited for centuries. 2 more days won't hurt." I nodded and walked out of the studio. Returning to my apartment, the first thing I did was take out the keys Connor had given me. The apartment was on the military base, just a short drive from the museum. I thought perhaps a change of environment would help calm my nerves. The house was standard military-assigned housing. The decor was simple, but it was cleaned spotlessly. On the coffee table in the living room sat a first aid kit, and next to it was a note. The handwriting was Connor's, vigorous and sharp. "Common medicines for emergencies." I opened the kit. Inside, neatly categorized, were Band-Aids, antiseptic, gauze, and even a tube of ointment specifically for allergic reactions to UV exposure. My heart felt like it had been gently bumped by something. He actually remembered me saying I was allergic to UV rays. Just then, my phone rang. It was Connor. I answered the call, my voice a little tight. "The briefing just ended. Miller said you were looking for me." His voice sounded a bit tired, with the sound of wind in the background. I hesitated, but decided to get straight to the point. "Jason's company suddenly agreed to all my terms today, and even gave extra compensation. Did you do that?" The other end fell silent for a few seconds. "I promised you I wouldn't interfere," he said. "Then what is going on here?" I pressed. He paused again, seemingly organizing his words. "One of the main investors in Apex Venture Capital is Liberty Holdings. The chairman of Liberty Holdings is an old subordinate of my father's." I instantly understood. This wasn't Connor's pull, but General Hayes's his authoritative father's pull. "So you asked your father?" My voice was a little dry. "I didn't." Connor interrupted me. "It was my mother. She heard from Miller what happened at the hospital that day, and made a call to my father. Eleanor, that woman who gave me the vintage bracelet and told me the family will back you up." A complex wave of emotion surged in my heart. There was being moved. There was warmth. But mostly there was a sense of unease. I didn't want our marriage, right from the start, to be built upon the shelter of his family. "Connor, thank you. And please thank your mom and dad for me too. But I hope this is the last time," I said seriously. "I want to settle my own accounts myself." His answer was crisp, without a hint of reluctance. "I respect your decision." His understanding made the lingering trace of unease in my heart slowly dissipate. He asked suddenly, "Yeah, just got here." "That's good," he said. "Get some rest early." Hanging up the phone, I looked around this unfamiliar room, but felt an unprecedented sense of security. There were no traces of Jason here, no entanglements of the past. Everything was a new beginning. However, what I thought was a new beginning was completely disrupted by an uninvited guest. The next day, I was in the studio, fully concentrated on the final UV light inspection process, when a museum security guard suddenly ran up, looking panicked. "Miss Vance, it's bad. Downstairs. There's a group of people downstairs claiming to be your family, causing a scene in the lobby." My heart sank. My parents lived out of state and couldn't possibly be here. Who could it be? I rushed downstairs and saw a crowd gathered in the lobby. Standing right in the middle was Jason's mother and several of his relatives. Brenda Sterling was grabbing the museum director's arm, sobbing uncontrollably. "Director, you have to stand up for us. Your employee here, this Clara Vance. She swindled our family out of 4 years of feelings and money. And now she conspired with a soldier to threaten us. We are just a helpless widow and son. We have nowhere to turn for justice." Brenda's crying was shrill and grating, echoing through the lobby, attracting more and more coworkers and tourists. Her performance, twisting the truth and throwing a tantrum on the floor, was like a poisoned blade, scraping my dignity off piece by piece and throwing it on the ground for her to trample. People say our family wasted her time, but we gave her a $150,000 engagement ring and a down payment on a house. She's the one who is promiscuous. On the day of the wedding registration, she ran off with another man. And now she wants to steal our company's shares. Where in the world is there such logic? Her words exploded in the crowd like a bomb. The looks my colleagues gave me instantly went from sympathetic to shocked and disdainful. So that's how it is. Taking the ring money and cheating. Couldn't tell. She usually seems so quiet and cultured. That guy is in the military too. That's destroying a military marriage, isn't it? The rumors and gossip surged toward me like venomous snakes. I stood on the outer edge of the crowd, my entire body freezing cold, so angry I couldn't speak. I had never received a single cent of ring money from the Sterling family. As for that condo, the deed only had Jason and his mother's names on it. From beginning to end, it had absolutely nothing to do with me. And the money I invested in the company was the hard-earned money my parents left me. But now, out of Brenda's mouth, I had become a greedy, morally bankrupt gold digger. I pushed through the crowd and charged in, my voice trembling with rage. "Please watch what you say. When did I ever take a ring from your family? Does that house have anything to do with me?" Seeing me, Brenda didn't dial it back. Instead, she grew even more agitated. She threw off the director and rushed at me, trying to grab my hair. "You little bitch! You still have the face to come out! Give me my son back!" I was prepared, taking a step back to dodge her. "Stop it!" The director was pale with anger, shouting at the security guards. "What are you waiting for? Escort them all out. If they keep making a scene, call the police." Several security guards immediately stepped forward, trying to pull Brenda and her relatives away. The scene instantly became even more chaotic. Brenda took the opportunity to sit right on the floor and started wailing at the top of her lungs, slapping her thighs and shouting, "Assault! The museum people are hitting us!" Corrupt insiders protecting each other, bullying everyday citizens. This tactic was Brenda's specialty. I had personally seen her use the exact same method in a mall to force a waitress who accidentally bumped into her to apologize. Watching this absurd scene unfold before me, my heart grew colder by the inch. I suddenly realized that trying to reason with people who had no bottom line was useless. The more you tried to prove your innocence, the more they would drag you into the mud, making you covered in filth that couldn't be washed off. Just as I was about to be swallowed by this boundless malice, a tall, straight figure pushed through the chaotic crowd and walked firmly to stand right in front of me. It was Connor. He was wearing his crisp U.S. Army Green Service uniform, the gold rank insignia gleaming on his shoulders. The brim of his cap was pulled low, obscuring his expression. But just by standing there, it was as if an invisible barrier was erected, blocking out all the noise and malice. He took off his military uniform jacket and draped it over me, as I was trembling slightly from anger and humiliation. Then he turned around and faced Brenda, who was still throwing a tantrum on the floor. "I am Clara Vance's husband, Connor Hayes." His voice was not loud, but it reached the ears of everyone present clearly. "Infantry officer, U.S. Army." He first stated his identity. Then his gaze swept toward Brenda like lightning. "This lady, you just said my wife conspired with me to threaten you?" Brenda was intimidated by his overwhelming aura, her crying quieting down. You say she is destroying a military marriage? Connor's voice turned cold. State laws have strict penalties for fraud, and the Uniform Code of Military Justice takes a very hard line on civilian harassment of service members and their spouses. Let me ask you, did I destroy someone else's marriage, or is someone trying to destroy my marriage? His logic was clear, his words resounding, laying out the legal realities directly. Those who had just been whispering instantly shut their mouths. As for the ring and the equity issues you mentioned, Connor's gaze turned to our museum director. He gave a textbook salute. Director, I apologize that my family affairs have brought negative impact to your institution. I request that you allow me to use a museum conference room, and I ask you to serve as a neutral third-party witness. I will confront this lady, as well as the victim she speaks of, Mr. Jason Sterling, face-to-face to clarify all the facts. Also, I have notified a JAG officer from my base. He will record the entire process for legal evidence. His words were well-founded, neither arrogant nor submissive, instantly turning the tide. What was originally a chaotic street-level farce was forcefully elevated by him to a level requiring official intervention and legal arbitration. The director paused for a second, then immediately nodded. Fine, I agree. Security, clear the lobby. Prepare the conference room. Brenda was completely dumbfounded. She probably never expected that she just wanted to cause a scene to force me to yield, but ended up hitting a brick wall. She climbed up from the floor, yelling with false bravado, You! Stop trying to use the military to suppress me. My son will be here any minute. We're not afraid of you. Half an hour later, in a small conference room at the museum, Connor and I sat side by side on one side of the table. Across from us sat Jason, whose face was completely flushed with anger, and his mother, who was still constantly wiping away tears. The museum director and several museum executives sat in the witness seats. Connor's colleague, a young officer wearing a JAG insignia, had set up a camera. All right, Mr. Sterling, Connor spoke first, pushing a document to the center of the table. This is the original founder's share agreement Clara Vance signed with your company. It is clearly stated in black and white that Clara Vance bought in using a property located on the south side, valued at $600,000. Do you admit this? Jason's lips moved, but he ultimately nodded. Yes. Connor produced a second document. This is the transaction record my attorney pulled from the county recorder's office this morning. The record shows that this property was transferred into the name of Apex Venture Capital 3 years ago via an equity transfer. That means this house has long belonged to your company's assets. And my wife, Clara Vance, only possesses the corresponding equity shares. Do you admit this too? Jason's face grew even uglier. Connor's gaze turned to Brenda. This lady? You kept saying this was a house your family bought for the wedding. So tell me, how does a house that has belonged to corporate assets for 3 years become a house you only intended to give for a wedding today? One sentence directly punctured Brenda's lie. She was tongue-tied, unable to speak for a long time, and could only look to her son for help. And this was only the beginning. As for the $150,000 engagement ring you mentioned, Connor's gaze returned to Jason, his tone flat but carrying unquestionable pressure. Please present the transfer records or bank statements. Any form of proof will do. As long as you can prove that Clara Vance or her family received a single cent of ring money from you or your family, I, Connor Hayes, will apologize to you in front of everyone today and return double the amount. Fine sweat beaded on Jason's forehead. Of course, he couldn't produce it, because it never existed. That $150,000 was just a number his mother casually bragged about to show off to relatives. The conference room was dead silent. Brenda's face went from pale to sickly, shifting uncomfortably in her seat. Connor didn't give him a chance to breathe. Continuing, I actually do have some records here. He distributed a stack of printed papers to everyone present. These are partial wire transfer records from Clara Vance's personal account to Jason Sterling's personal account, as well as Apex Venture Capital's corporate accounts, over the past 4 years. The total amount is $150,000. The largest single transfer of $100,000 occurred when your company faced difficulties during Series A funding, and Clara cashed out an inheritance trust left by her mother early to wire to you. Miss Sterling, what did you use this money for? Do I need to help you jog your memory? Jason's body jolted violently. He looked at Connor in disbelief, as if looking at a demon. These were the most private financial dealings between them. How could he know them so clearly? I was equally shocked. I had never mentioned these details to Connor. Connor sensed my confusion and whispered in my ear. I had Miller check the computer in your apartment. Your bookkeeping software was not encrypted. My face instantly burned red. I did have a habit of keeping accounts. Every expense was recorded clearly, including everything I had sacrificed for Jason and his company over those years. I originally just wanted to keep a record for myself, but I never expected that today. It would become the most powerful evidence. This money, Clara Vance never called it a loan. She always considered it an investment in your joint venture. And you, Mr. Sterling, Connor's voice suddenly grew sharp. This is how you repay your partner. Not only standing her up on registration day for the 4th time, but also trying to force a buyout of her shares at rock-bottom prices after breaking up, and enabling your mother to come to her workplace to ruin her reputation with lies and slander. With every word he said, Jason's head lowered an inch. By the end, he practically buried his face in his chest. Brenda still tried to struggle, pointing at me and yelling, "But her fooling around with other men is true, right? Just hooking up on registration day, enough." Jason suddenly erupted with a roar, cutting off his mother's words. He stood up violently, his red eyes glaring at Connor. That look was filled with extreme unwillingness and total defeat. "Yes, I admit it. Yes, I wronged her." He seemed to have used all his strength. "But, Captain Hayes, do not make yourself sound so noble. Do you dare say you marrying her wasn't a moment of impulse? Do you know her? Do you know who she is? You just picked up the trash I threw away." This sentence was vicious to the extreme. I was shaking with anger, and was about to retort, but Connor pressed my hand down, signaling me not to speak. He stood up, walking step by step until he was in front of Jason. He was half a head taller than Jason. The military uniform made his posture look as imposing as a mountain. He looked down at him, his eyes devoid of anger, only a near pitying calmness. "You are wrong," he said. "I admit meeting her was an accident, but marrying her was the most correct decision I will ever make in my life. I am not like you. I don't need business success to prove my worth. My worth is reflected in the nation I defend and the family I protect." He paused, his gaze turning to me. The look in his eyes held a gentleness and firmness I had never seen before. "As for who she is, I know better than you. She is not the fragile flower clinging to you that you describe. Her name is Clara Vance. She is a top-tier art conservator. Her hands can give rebirth to shattered national treasures. Her heart is 10,000 times tougher than you imagine. She is not trash you threw away, but a treasure you are unworthy of possessing." After saying that, he didn't look at Jason again. He took my hand, gave a slight nod to the director, and the crowd. "I apologize for the trouble caused to everyone. My lawyer will handle the subsequent matters." Then, leading me, under the complex gazes of everyone present, we walked out of the conference room. Sunlight spilled through the museum's glass dome onto us. Looking at his broad back, looking at our tightly clasped hands, my tears finally fell uncontrollably. These were not tears of grievance, but of being moved, of relief, of rebirth. Stepping outside, he stopped. Using his uninjured hand, he gently wiped the tears from my face. His movements were clumsy but exceptionally gentle. "Don't cry," he said. "You have me from now on." Right then, his phone rang. He answered it, and his face instantly turned grave. "Copy that. Tier 1 readiness. Returning to base immediately." He hung up, looking at me, his eyes full of apology and reluctance. "I have to go." My heart sank violently. "Leaving again? How long this time?" He was silent. We both knew the answer to this question. He couldn't say, "I will wait for you," I said. This time it wasn't an impulse, not spoken out of spite, but the most solemn promise from the bottom of my heart. He looked at me deeply, his eyes holding 1,000 words. He didn't hug me, nor kiss me. He just raised his hand and gave me a solemn military salute. Then he turned, marching with firm steps toward his battlefield. I stood there, watching his back disappear into the sunlight. The vintage bracelet Eleanor had given me felt warm and smooth against my wrist. I knew my war was over, and his war might have just begun. But this time, I was no longer alone. "My name is Clara Vance. I am an art conservator, and I am a military spouse. I will wait for him to return." After Connor left, life seemed to return to its original track. But something had fundamentally changed. Jason and his mother never appeared again. After that confrontation, he seemed to evaporate. I only heard from my lawyer that he accepted all our equity swap conditions and publicly issued a clarification statement within his firm, shifting all the blame onto his mother, claiming it was all a misunderstanding. I knew he was scared. He wasn't scared of me, but of the unchallengeable order and power Connor represented behind him. My heart was unprecedentedly calm. I poured all my energy into restoring that colonial American terracotta jug. With no distractions, my hands became exceptionally steady. Every step was flawlessly precise. When the final stroke of color was perfectly filled into the crack, blending with the original clay, leaving absolutely no trace under the lights, I let out a long sigh of relief. This centuries-old treasure had found new life in my hands. This sense of achievement was unmatched by any emotional entanglement. However, the peace I thought I had was soon shattered. That day, my mentor, Professor Harrison, called me into his office with a solemn expression. Clara. He handed me a gold-embossed invitation. Mr. Astor has specifically asked to see you. Mr. Astor? I was stunned. Mr. Astor was a titan in the national art collecting world, supposedly wealthy beyond measure, with countless masterpieces in his collection. He was a highly elusive billionaire who operated entirely in the shadows, the ultimate client every conservator dreamed of. He has a family heirloom, a severely damaged John Singleton Copley canvas. He has consulted countless famous experts across the country, but they are all at their wits' end. Professor Harrison's tone carried a hint of excitement. A few days ago, he saw the restoration report on the early American jug our museum exhibited. He praised your skills highly and specifically requested you to take the job. My heart thrilled. Being able to restore such a masterpiece was an honor. But, Professor Harrison's tone shifted, his brow furrowing again. Mr. Astor is bringing a commercial partnership project this time. He plans to invest $100 million to build a world-class private art conservation center in the U.S., and the commercial partner he selected is Apex Venture Capital. What? My blood instantly ran cold. Jason? Exactly, Professor Harrison sighed. Jason has been maneuvering for a long time to get on Mr. Astor's good side. This time, he bet everything on that old house your parents left you. I instantly understood Jason's previous actions. He wanted to force buy my studio to curry favor with Mr. Astor, using it as the headquarters for the future conservation center, in exchange for this partnership. I'm afraid so. Professor Harrison looked at me, his eyes full of worry. Clara, I know what that old house means to you, but a man like Jason will stoop to anything for profit. I heard he has already promised Mr. Astor through other channels that he will definitely secure your studio. My hands involuntarily balled into fists. That old house was the only inheritance my parents left me. I had converted it into a studio. It held all my blood and sweat. It was the sanctuary of my soul. Jason actually dared to scheme for it. Don't worry, Professor. I know what to do. I raised my head, no trace of hesitation in my eyes. In the past, for him, I was willing to hide all my edges, burying the name Vance, a name only known in the elite collecting circles deep away, because he said he didn't like his woman outshining him. But now, he forced my hand. I didn't contact Jason directly. Instead, through my mentor's connections, I reached out to several highly respected seniors in the collecting world, casually leaking the news that Jason was attempting a hostile takeover of my studio. I didn't use my first name. I only used the moniker Vance. It instantly created massive waves. The name Vance might be unknown to regular people, but in the true elite collecting circles, it was legendary. It was the guarantee of mastery, synonymous with turning decay into magic. Over the years, every museum-grade artifact I restored left those arrogant, top-tier collectors in awe. Who dares touch Vance's studio? That's not a studio. That's the holy land of our collecting world. Apex Venture Capital? Never heard of them. Big talk for a small firm. Tell them, whoever makes Vance unhappy is making an enemy of our entire collecting community. Overnight, Jason hit walls everywhere. Investors and partners who usually greeted him with smiles suddenly started avoiding him like the plague. He finally realized he had stepped on a landmine. He began frantically investigating who exactly Vance was. He called in countless favors, even offering exorbitant sums just to meet Vance once. He couldn't, under any circumstances, connect this legendary master in the conservation world with Clara Vance, the woman who only knew how to make soup for him, remind him to eat on time, and who, in his eyes, was somewhat boring. Finally, through a political and business titan he couldn't afford to offend, he secured a meeting with my mentor, Professor Harrison, hoping to use him as a bridge to Vance. That day, I happened to be going to my mentor's gallery to drop off some restored antique books. When I pushed the door open, Jason was sitting with his back to me at the lounge area with my mentor, Professor Harrison. His voice carried an irrepressible urgency. I am here with sincere intentions to visit Vance. As long as she is willing to part with it, the price is not an issue. Furthermore, as long as the partnership with Mr. Astor succeeds, I am willing to gift 10% of the Conservation Center's shares to Vance free of charge. He thought the terms he offered were irresistible to anyone. Professor Harrison took a sip of tea, cast a mild glance at him, then looked up at me as I walked through the door, a gentle smile appearing on his face. Speak of the devil. He set down his teacup and waved at me. Clara, come. Let me introduce you. This is the Mr. Sterling of Apex Venture Capital I mentioned, the one who took a liking to your studio. Jason slowly turned around. When his gaze fell on me, the determined, corporate elite expression on his face instantly froze. His pupils contracted violently. His mouth fell slightly open. From shock, to horror, to utter disbelief. The blood drained inch by inch from his handsome face, turning it as pale as paper. Time seemed to stand still in this moment. I looked at his soul-crushed appearance, my heart completely ripple-free. I simply walked over calmly, gave a slight bow to my mentor, Professor. I brought the books. Only then did I turn my gaze to Jason, the corners of my mouth curling into a distant, icy arc. Mr. Sterling, long time no see. I heard you wanted to see me. That, Mr. Sterling landed like a resounding slap hard on his face. He opened his mouth, his Adam's apple bobbing, but he couldn't say a single word. The world in his eyes seemed to be turning upside down, collapsing in ruins. He looked at me as if looking at a total stranger. A monster. I knew that from this moment on, the docile, obedient Clara Vance who could be casually sacrificed in his heart was dead. Standing before him was Vance. The Vance he exhausted every scheme to suck up to, yet had thrown away with his own hands. Leaving Professor Harrison's gallery, Jason followed behind me like a lost soul. Clara, you are Vance? His voice was dry and hoarse, full of a trance-like disbelief. I stopped, not turning around, just looking coldly at the bustling traffic ahead. Whether I am or not, does it still have anything to do with Mr. Sterling? Why? Why did you never tell me? He took a step forward, his tone carrying a trace of angry betrayal, and even more regret. I finally turned around, looking at him like he was a joke. Tell you? Jason, I did tell you. I told you my work is important, that I need absolute silence and focus. But what did you do? You brought your drinking buddies over to throw a party right at my most critical moments. I told you every single thing I restored was priceless. And what did you do? You brushed it off, saying I was just an artisan patching things up. Did you ever care about anything I told you? Every word I said was like an awl, stabbing viciously into his heart. His face grew paler and paler, his lips trembling, unable to utter a single word of rebuttal. So put away your betrayed face. I looked at him with disgust. It's not that you didn't know my value. You just fundamentally looked down on my value in your bones. In your eyes, only your business, your investments, your acquisitions are worthy of respect. Right now, you just regret missing out on Vance, the tool that could bring you a $100 million project. After saying that, I ignored him, hailed a cab, and sped away. I thought that with the truth revealed, he would give up. But I still underestimated the shamelessness of his family. The blow Jason suffered was probably too massive. He was utterly crushed. But his mother, after learning that I was the Vance who held the life and death of her son's company in my hands, didn't dial it back. Instead, she came up with an even more vicious tactic. She probably thought, since the hard way didn't work, she would try the soft way, using moral blackmail on me. And thus occurred the earth-shattering farce in the museum lobby. Only she didn't expect that the target of her tantrums was no longer the Clara Vance, who would constantly yield out of consideration for old feelings. And standing behind me was a person she couldn't afford to offend even more. When Connor appeared with the JAG officer, using cold legal statutes to block all her crying and screaming, Brenda's face, flushed red with agitation, showed true fear for the first time. Don't try to scare me. She scrambled up from the floor, remaining stubborn. Our Jason is the victim. She tricked Jason's feelings. Miss Sterling. The young JAG officer pushed his glasses up, his tone, professional, and icy. Your words and actions are already suspected of defamation and disturbing the peace. Under civilian law, you can be subject to arrest. Furthermore, you publicly insulted the spouse of an active-duty military officer. The circumstances are severe. The military reserves the right to pursue your legal liability in conjunction with federal authorities. What? Is not what arrest? Brenda completely panicked. She never expected things to blow up this big. Additionally, the JAG officer produced a document regarding the $150,000 that your son, Mr. Jason Sterling, obtained from my client, Miss Clara Vance, under the guise of corporate cash flow during their relationship. We have reason to suspect this constitutes fraud under the pretext of romance. We are advising Miss Vance to reserve the right to recover these funds through legal channels and pursue criminal charges against relevant personnel. Nonsense. That was given voluntarily. It was their joint investment, Brenda shrieked. Oh? Connor let out a cold laugh. He hadn't spoken much, but when he opened his mouth, it carried the weight of 1,000 pounds. Since it was an investment, why did Apex Venture Capital, in its subsequent 3 rounds of funding, never confirm or supplement the equity dilution of Miss Clara Vance, its original angel investor? Instead, after breaking up, you attempted a forced buyout at a valuation far below market price. Miss Sterling, your son's actions are called breach of fiduciary duty in business. In law, it is called embezzlement. Every word Connor said was like a precise bullet, shattering all of Brenda's excuses. She was completely dumbfounded, only able to repeatedly mutter, "Jason, I need to find my son, Jason." Jason, who had been summoned, quickly arrived at the scene. Seeing the setup in the conference room, especially the officer wearing the JAG insignia and the camera on a tripod, his legs turned to jelly. He knew better than his mother that once things escalated to this level, there was absolutely no room to play dirty. The subsequent confrontation was a completely one-sided steamroll. Connor and the JAG officer used undeniable evidence transfer records, property deeds, corporate equity alteration agreements to tear the Sterling mother and son's lies and slander to shreds. From beginning to end, aside from crying and repeating, "I don't know," Brenda couldn't utter a complete sentence. As for Jason, he kept his head down the entire time, his face going from pale to sickly to a deathly ash. He didn't even dare look up at me once. The museum director and executives looking at me shifted their gazes from initial doubt to total sympathy and admiration. They probably never expected that the usually quiet little Clara buried in old artifacts had such a turbulent past and such powerful backing. Finally, the JAG officer closed his file and gave a concluding statement. Given that Miss Brenda Sterling's actions have severely damaged Miss Clara Vance's reputation and disrupted the museum's public order, we demand that Miss Sterling issue a public apology to Miss Vance in a designated newspaper within 3 days. Otherwise, we will formally file a lawsuit. Secondly, regarding the Apex Venture Capital equity issue, we will commission a third-party firm to conduct an asset evaluation. We demand Mr. Jason Sterling buy out Miss Clara Vance's original shares in cash at the company's highest current valuation and pay out the dividends owed for the past 4 years. As for the $150,000, the JAG officer's gaze turned to Jason. We classify it as a conditional gift. The condition was for the purpose of marriage. Now that the purpose of marriage cannot be realized, we demand Mr. Jason Sterling refund the full amount within 7 days. Every point was like a heavy hammer, smashing ruthlessly onto the hearts of the Sterling mother and son. No, impossible. Brenda finally broke down, screaming, "This is robbery! Jason, say something!" Jason slowly raised his head. In those once spirited eyes, only endless gray and fear remained. He looked at Connor, his voice hoarse. "Captain Hayes, can we settle this privately?" Connor looked at him coldly, like looking at a pathetic joke. "I have nothing to discuss with you." He stood up, walked to my side, took my hand, his voice instantly turning gentle. Let's go home." At that moment, I felt like I had been scooped out of a filthy mud pit and then washed clean with the purest water. So this is what it feels like to be firmly protected by someone. Coming out of the museum, the sky outside had already grown somewhat dark. Connor kept a tight grip on my hand. His palm was broad and warm, transmitting a reassuring strength. "Thank you for today," I said softly. "I told you, you have me from now on." He turned his head to look at me, the streetlights falling on his sharp profile, his eyes holding a softness I had never seen before. "They won't bother you again. I believe it. Returning to the base apartment, Miller had already dropped off dinner. It was from the mess hall, a steak dinner with sides. Simple, but steaming hot. During dinner, Connor got a phone call. It was from the JAG officer. Yeah, good. Execute it according to this plan. Don't give them any room to bargain. Yes, all procedures must be strictly legal and compliant. We don't bully people, but we absolutely will not allow anyone to bully a military family. He hung up the phone and saw me looking at him. Jason wants to settle out of court, he explained concisely. He wants to buy back the shares at a price far below the valuation and pay that money back in installments. And you? I refused. Connor put a forkful of food onto my plate. One thing is one thing. He owes you, and he won't be short a single cent. I looked at my plate, a mix of emotions in my heart. This man was using his most direct, fundamental way to get back all my justice and dignity. Connor. I put down my fork and looked at him seriously. Actually, I never planned on getting that money back. Why? He frowned. That's what you deserve. I just wanted to make a clean break with him. I didn't want to have any more entanglements. I smiled bitterly. I was afraid he would think I did all this just for the money. Connor was silent. He looked at me quietly for a while, then suddenly said, Clara Vance, do you think that if you ask for the money back, it negates the feelings you had over the past 4 years? I froze. He hit the nail on the head. I was terrified to admit that my 4 years of youth and sacrifice ultimately resulted only in a pile of cold numbers that required a lawsuit to recover. I would rather pretend that money was thrown into the ocean to prove my love was once pure. You are wrong. Connor's voice was deep and powerful. Recovering your lawful rights and the feelings you once gave are two entirely different things. The former is defending your dignity and bottom line. The latter is your past. You cannot abandon your bottom line just because of a failed relationship. He looked at me, his eyes unprecedentedly serious. A person who couldn't even see your sacrifice and value, and even attempted to embezzle it, why should you care what he thinks of you? Your dignity doesn't need to be proven by his approval. His words were like a key, instantly unlocking the knot that had been tied in my heart for so long. Yes, why should I care what Jason thought? He was no longer worthy. That night, I slept exceptionally soundly. The next day, the legal team officially issued a final ultimatum to Jason. Facing pressure from the military JAG office and the impending lawsuit, Jason completely broke down. He called me countless times. I didn't answer a single one. He started sending me texts, one after another. The content went from angry questioning at the start to begging and repenting later. Clara, I was wrong. I was really wrong. I shouldn't have treated you like that. I shouldn't have ignored your feelings. But why? Why didn't you tell me earlier that you were Vance? If you had told me earlier, things would never have ended up like this between us. I admit I let the Astor project go to my head, but everything I did was for our future. I wanted to give you the best life. Clara, give me one more chance, okay? Let's start over. I will transfer 40% of the company's shares to your name. No, 50%. As long as you come back, the company is ours. Looking at these messages, I only felt they were ridiculous and pathetic. Right up until the very end, he still believed all the problems stemmed from me not telling him my true identity. He still believed that equity and money could salvage everything. His regret wasn't because he lost me, but because he lost the Vance who could bring him a $100 million project. I screenshotted all the messages. Then, I calmly replied to his final text. Mr. Sterling, I think you are mistaken. First, please call me Mrs. Hayes. Second, the you says you speak of ceased to exist the 4th time you left me waiting at City Hall. Lastly, I wish you and your company a bright future. After sending that message, I blocked him again. This time, it truly was never to meet again. However, I still underestimated the madness of a man pushed to the brink. Jason hit a dead end with me. Seeing his company's cash flow about to snap because he offended Mr. Astor and the entire collecting world, he chose a path of mutual destruction. A few days later, the internet was suddenly flooded with hit pieces about me. Shocking. The truth behind National Treasure Conservator Vance. Sleeping her way to the top. Exposed. The conspiracy behind a military marriage. Failed gold digger kicks 4. Year startup boyfriend to the curb. Article after article used sensationalist headlines, accompanied by photoshopped, misleadingly angled photos. Pictures of me discussing academia with my mentor late at night, framed as an illicit rendezvous. pictures of me and Connor at the hospital framed as marital infidelity, and various so-called insider leaks painting me as a scheming, promiscuous woman who would stop at nothing for money. Public opinion instantly blew up. My name and my photos hung on the trending lists of every major social media platform, receiving curses and attacks from countless netizens unaware of the truth. Couldn't tell. She acts so pure. Turns out she's this kind of person. Most toxic woman ever. Stays with a guy till he succeeds, then dumps him for a soldier to get a free pass. Disgrace to military spouses. This kind of woman should be cancelled. I looked at those vicious comments, my hands and feet turning ice cold. I knew this was Jason's final counterattack. He wanted to destroy me. Since he couldn't have me, he would ruin me completely, making me disgraced in this industry. The online storm came fast and fierce, like a tsunami without warning, instantly swallowing me whole. My phone blew up. Harassment and curses from media and strangers. Concerned inquiries from friends and colleagues. The museum's phone lines were blown up too, with countless people calling in demanding the severe punishment of a morally bankrupt employee. The director couldn't withstand the pressure and temporarily suspended me, sending me home to wait for the results of an investigation. I locked myself in my apartment, drew all the curtains, shutting out everything from the outside. The room was dark, only the light from my phone screen illuminating my pale face. I scrolled through those vile comments and so-called leaks one by one. Every sentence was like a knife slicing my nerves. They didn't know me. They didn't know that to restore an artifact, I could go days without closing my eyes. They didn't know that to mix the adhesive closest to the original, my hands were scarred from chemical corrosion. And they definitely didn't know how much blood, sweat, and money I poured into that so-called 4-year relationship. Based only on a few fabricated photos and twisted words, they easily handed down my death sentence. I felt an unprecedented powerlessness and cold. I knew Jason did this. He understood the power of public opinion too well. He knew that for a technical worker in the cultural sector like me, reputation was everything. Once my reputation was ruined, my career was over. He didn't just want me to lose my job, he wanted me to suffer a complete mental breakdown. I sat in the dark, not knowing how much time had passed, until my phone rang. It was Connor. Seeing his name, my tears could no longer be controlled and fell. I didn't want him to see me in such a miserable state. I especially didn't want him dragged into this filthy public relations war because of me. A soldier's honor is more important than anything. I hung up the phone, but he quickly called back, over and over again, as stubborn as the man himself. I finally answered. Hello? My voice was terribly hoarse. Open the door. The other end had only 2 brief words. I froze for a second before realizing he was right outside. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole at that familiar figure. He was still wearing his crisp uniform, standing quietly outside the door like a silent statue. I opened the door. He looked at my red, swollen eyes and haggard face. He said nothing, just walked in and pulled me tightly into his embrace. His hug was warm, carrying a faint scent of soap and a reassuring strength. I buried my face in his chest. All the grievance and fear finally found a place to rest in this moment. I cried out loud. He didn't speak, just used his broad palm to stroke my back over and over until my crying gradually subsided. I'm sorry, I sobbed. I embarrassed you. He let me go, cupped my face, and used his thumbs to gently wipe away my tears. His eyes were deep and resolute, without a shred of doubt or blame. You did nothing wrong. Why are you apologizing? He looked into my eyes and enunciated each word. The ones who should apologize are those hiding in dark corners hurting you. My heart trembled violently. I thought he would question me, doubt me, get angry because I was smeared, but he didn't. He didn't even ask a single question about those photos. He simply chose to believe me unconditionally. But right now, everyone does not include me. He cut me off, his voice not loud, but firm as steel. I trust my own eyes, and I trust my wife. He led me to the sofa and sat down, then pulled a ruggedized military laptop and a thick stack of documents from his briefcase. The moment the news broke online, I had the cyber division guys start tracking it. He opened the laptop. The screen displayed complex code and data streams. All the bot accounts and the IP addresses of the media outlets that broke the story have been locked down. He handed the stack of documents to me. This is the dossier on the bot farm company and their contract with Apex Venture Capital. This is the background information on the shareholders behind those initial media outlets. 2 of them have direct financial ties to Jason Sterling. I looked at him in shock. Looking at those detailed, Hair-raising investigation reports. From the eruption of the scandal until now, only a few short hours had passed. Yet he had already stripped the masterminds bare. Was this the operational efficiency of the U.S. military? Connor, I don't know what to say. He closed the laptop, holding my cold hands, his gaze calm and sharp. Clara, listen to me. This battle is not yours alone. You are not fighting by yourself. From the day you became a military spouse, your honor became my honor, and the honor of the armed forces. We absolutely will not allow anyone to use despicable methods to slander someone who protects our nation's cultural treasures, or to defame the family member of an active-duty soldier. His words were like a beam of light, instantly piercing through all the darkness and gloom surrounding me. I looked at him, at the unquestionable resolve and protection in his eyes. I suddenly understood exactly what kind of man I had married. He might not understand romance, might not say sweet nothings, but he would use the most powerful actions to hold up the sky for me. Then what do we do now? I asked, the previous panic gone from my voice. The corner of Connor's mouth curled into a cold arc. Doesn't Jason like playing the media game? Then we will play a big one with him. Under Connor's arrangement, a silent counterattack quietly kicked off. Following his instructions, I first published an open letter on my personal social media accounts. In the letter, I offered no hysterical defenses, nor any tearful pleas for pity. I simply and calmly laid out the entire process of my relationship with Jason, from startup to breakup. I attached the partial wire transfer records and the equity transfer agreement he had forced me to sign. I wrote, 4 years of feelings. I once treasured them and gave everything. But when my sacrifices and dignity could be sacrificed time and time again under the guise of projects and the future, I understood that what was between us was no longer love, but an unequal transaction. My choice to let go was my final act of self-respect. As for those smear photos and remarks, I will only say one thing. The truth speaks for itself. I have retained legal counsel and reported this to the relevant military authorities. We will pursue legal action against all those spreading rumors and defamation. No leniency will be given. Finally, I tagged my new husband, Connor, and attached a photo of our marriage certificate. Out of millions of people, in the endless wasteland of time, not a step early, not a step late, we just happened to meet. Thank you, Mr. Hayes, for showing me what true respect and protection looks like. At Connor Hayes. As soon as this letter was published, it immediately caused massive waves online. Compared to the previous sensationalist leaks, my calm, restrained, and evidence-backed open letter quickly won the trust of a portion of rational netizens. I smell a plot twist. This girl writes so well. Neither arrogant nor submissive. Highlight. Transferred $150,000 over 4 years. Stood up 4 times at City Hall. Damn, if this is true, the ex-boyfriend is top-tier trash. Wait, I looked up this Connor Hayes. He was awarded a Bronze Star for Valor last year during a deployment. My God, is the trash guy so desperate for business that he's throwing dirt on a decorated veteran? The tide of public opinion began to undergo a subtle shift. But this was only step 1. Immediately following, an explosive piece of news was released by the official Department of Defense Public Affairs account. Severely punish cyberbullying, protect the lawful rights of military personnel and their families. The official bulletin severely condemned the recent online fabrication and defamation directed at active duty officer Captain Connor Hayes and his spouse, Miss Clara Vance. It explicitly stated that the military had coordinated with the FBI to formally open a criminal investigation into the relevant individuals and organizations suspected of harassment, wire fraud, and defamation. At the end of the bulletin was a long list. On that list were the names of the media outlets that first published the smears, and the name of the bot farm company. The official intervention came down like a thunderbolt. The entire internet blew up. If my personal clarification only made netizens skeptical, the military's official statement was a hammer, striking the final nail, directly pinning Jason to the pillar of shame. My God, the DoD stepped in. The nature of this has completely changed. I told you, you don't mess with military families. Is that tech CEO crazy, daring to smear a military spouse? He's trying to send his own company to prison. Apex Venture Capital, right? Apex Venture Capital. Come take your beating. I'm boycotting every product your firm backs from now on. Public opinion online instantly completed a 180-degree reversal. Those who had cursed me the loudest previously began deleting comments and apologizing, turning their guns on Jason and his Apex Venture Capital. The company's stock price plummeted. But this was still not the end. That afternoon, the titan of the national collecting world, the mysterious Mr. Astor, also released a statement through his foundation's official account. In the statement, Mr. Astor introduced the outstanding achievements of Miss Vance, that is, me in the field of art conservation with extreme admiration, praising me as possessing both peerless skill and noble character, a true national treasure. At the end of the statement, he announced, given that Apex Venture Capital CEO Mr. Jason Sterling used despicable methods to suppress and smear America's top art conservation expert, Miss Clara Vance, his character is evident. Our foundation has decided to permanently terminate all partnership negotiations with Apex Venture Capital and add it to the blacklist for all our foundation's investment projects. If the DoD bulletin was a legal judgment, Mr. Astor's statement was a commercial death sentence. Losing Mr. Astor's $100 million project and being blacklisted by the entire collecting and investment world, the future of Apex Venture Capital was already sealed. I looked at the news continuously popping up on my phone, watching Jason turn from a sought-after young elite into a universally despised piece of trash. I felt no thrill of revenge, only endless sighs. He too once had dreams and ambitions. It was just that somewhere along the way, in the flood of capital, he lost himself. And he lost me. What are you thinking about? Connor's voice came from beside me. I shook my head. Nothing. Just feels like a dream. It's not a dream. He took my hand and pulled me into his arms. This is reality. This is the price everyone who tries to trample on the bottom line should pay. I leaned on his shoulder, feeling his steady heartbeat, unprecedentedly at peace. Connor? I asked softly. When did you start having them investigate? He fell silent for a moment, then said, before you posted that open letter. My heart warmed. While I was still trapped in self-doubt and pain, he had already paved the entire road for a counterattack. He didn't ask me a single question, just silently did everything. This kind of trust moved me more than any sweet words. Thank you, Connor. I looked up into his eyes and said seriously, truly, thank you. He looked at me, his deep eyes seeming to hold starlight. He slowly lowered his head, his warm breath brushing my face. My heart skipped a beat. Just as our distance closed, close enough that I could see his long eyelashes, he stopped. His Adam's apple bobbed, his voice a bit hoarse. Clara, ding-dong. The doorbell rang at the most inopportune moment. The sudden doorbell was like a bucket of cold water, instantly extinguishing the spark of ambiguity in the air. Connor's body stiffened. Then he straightened up somewhat unnaturally, clearing his throat. I'll get the door. I sat on the sofa, cheeks burning, heart still pounding. For a moment there, I thought he was going to kiss me. Standing outside the door were my mentor, Professor Harrison, and the museum director. Clara, you are finally all right. As soon as he entered, the director grabbed my hand excitedly. You have been wronged, truly wronged. Professor Harrison also looked at me with relief, patting my shoulder. Good job, Clara. I knew evil couldn't triumph over good. I quickly invited them to sit. Director, Professor, I am so sorry. My personal affairs brought so much trouble to the museum, I said guiltily. Ah, what are you saying? The director waved his hand repeatedly. We are the ones who should apologize. When you needed support the most, we suspended you. Clara, don't worry. You're coming back to work tomorrow. I have already posted an apology and explanation regarding your situation on the museum's bulletin board. He paused, then glanced at Connor, who was sitting calmly to the side. His eyes were full of respect and gratitude. Of course, the person we should thank most this time is Captain Hayes. If he hadn't struck like lightning, who knows what those corrupt media outlets would have hyped this up to be. Connor stood up and gave a slight nod to the director. You are too polite, director. Protecting family is my duty. Simple words, yet full of power. After exchanging pleasantries, Professor Harrison revealed the main purpose of their visit. Clara, do you remember Mr. Astor's Copley painting? I nodded. After Mr. Astor's statement went out, Jason's side was completely finished. But Mr. Astor's Conservation Center project is still moving forward. Professor Harrison's eyes sparkled. He personally called me today and formally invited you to be the chief conservator of the Future Center, with full authority over the entire project. I froze. Chief conservator? $100 million project? This massive opportunity falling from the sky left me somewhat overwhelmed. Furthermore, the director added with a smile, Mr. Astor also proposed a deep strategic partnership with our museum. The Future Conservation Center will share resources with our museum and jointly train talent. He also decided to donate a batch of priceless artifacts from his private collection to our museum free of charge. This is incredible news for you, and for the entire museum. Clara, I know this decision is sudden, Professor Harrison looked at me, speaking earnestly. But this is what you deserve. Your talent shouldn't be buried in a small restoration room. You have the ability, and you should step onto a broader stage, letting the world see just how incredible American art conservation techniques truly are. I looked at the eager eyes of my mentor and the director, then glanced at Connor, who was silently supporting me by my side. The flame that had been suppressed in my heart for so long reignited. Yes, why should I negate my own value just because of Jason? My name is Clara Vance. I am a top-tier art conservator. This is my true identity. My pride. Okay. I took a deep breath and nodded solemnly. Professor, Director, I accept the invitation. 3 days later, the American Heritage Museum Conservation Achievements Press Conference and the Astor Art Conservation Center project launch ceremony were held grandly in the Capitol's main hall. This was the highest-level event in the industry. Top domestic and international experts, collectors, museum directors, and mainstream media were all present. As the lead conservator of the recently successful Colonial American Terracotta Jug Project and the future chief conservator of the Conservation Center, I was naturally among those invited. I wore a tailored white suit and sat in the first row. Beside me was the special guest, Mr. Astor, and our director. Next to them was Connor, attending with special permission as a military family representative. He wasn't wearing his uniform today, but a black suit that made him look even more striking. He sat quietly beside me, like a steady mountain, making me feel incredibly secure. The press conference proceeded methodically. Just as the host was preparing to introduce the Conservation Center project, a small commotion suddenly arose in the back of the hall. I looked back to see a figure stumbling toward our side, fighting through the attempts of the staff to stop him. It was Jason. He had lost a lot of weight, his eye sockets sunken, his hair messy. That custom suit he used to be so proud of was now wrinkled and full of dirt. He no longer possessed even a fraction of the spirited corporate elite look he once had. Clara! Clara! He pushed through the crowd, screaming my name hoarsely. The eyes of everyone in the hall instantly focused on us. Security immediately stepped forward to drag him out. Let him come here, Mr. Astor, sitting beside me, suddenly spoke mildly. The security guards paused, but obeyed the order, releasing Jason. Jason ran to the front of the stage like he was grasping at a final lifeline. He didn't look at me, but dropped to his knees with a thud in front of Mr. Astor. Mr. Astor, I beg you, give me one more chance. Tears and sweat covered his face. He completely discarded all his dignity. I know I was wrong. I was possessed by greed. I am willing to transfer all shares of Apex Venture Capital to you for free. I don't want anything. I just beg you. I just beg you to be merciful and let me off this one time. The entire hall was in an uproar. No one expected that the once endlessly glorious CEO Sterling would appear here in such a miserable state. Mr. Astor looked down at him from above, his eyes lacking a single ripple, like looking at a pathetic ant. Mr. Sterling, I think you are mistaken. Mr. Astor's voice was not loud, but through the microphone, it clearly spread throughout the hall. The person who can decide your fate has never been me. He paused, slowly shifting his gaze to me. It is this Miss Clara Vance, whom you personally threw away and then attempted to destroy. Jason froze. He finally raised his head, using those bloodshot eyes to look at me. In that gaze was regret, unwillingness, pleading, and a trace of deep fear that even he hadn't noticed. The host reacted extremely fast, immediately taking over the conversation. Thank you, Mr. Astor. Next, let us welcome with the warmest applause the lead conservator of the Terracotta Jug Project and the future chief conservator of the Astor Art Conservation Center, the highly discussed Vance, to the stage. The spotlight hit me instantly. Under the gaze of the entire hall, I slowly stood up. Behind me, Connor used his warm palm to pat my back lightly, as if transmitting silent strength. I took a deep breath, faced the dazzling spotlight, and walked step by step onto the podium. Below the stage, Jason was still kneeling there. He tilted his head up, looking at me with an entirely unfamiliar, nearly desperate gaze. Perhaps it wasn't until this moment that he truly realized the distance between us was an entire world. I stood steady at the podium, my gaze sweeping calmly across the audience, over those eyes that had once looked at me with curiosity, doubt, and even disdain. Hello, everyone. I am Clara Vance, also known as Vance. My voice rang out clearly and steadily through the microphone. Over the past half-month, I experienced a storm that was perhaps the darkest of my life. I was smeared, cursed, and pushed onto the public execution stand in the most vicious way by the person I once trusted the most. The hall was dead silent. Only the clicking of camera shutters could be heard. Many people ask me, why didn't I reveal my identity earlier? If I had, would these misunderstandings have been avoided? I paused, looking directly at Jason below the stage, the corner of my mouth curling into a cold arc. What I want to say is, a person's value should not be defined by a moniker or a so-called title. When I was not Vance, did my professionalism and dedication as a conservator not deserve respect? Could my personality and dignity as an independent woman be trampled on at will? No, they cannot. Today, I stand here not to prove how amazing I am, nor to win anyone's sympathy. I just want to tell everyone, especially women who give silently in relationships, but are unseen and disrespected. Your value comes from yourself, from your own hands, your own mind, your own character. You do not need to attach yourself to anyone, much less need anyone's definition to prove your existence. Know your worth, and the world will recognize it. As my words fell, there was a brief silence, followed by thunderous applause. The applause lasted a long time. I saw my mentor and the director in the audience with red eyes. I saw Connor in the first row looking at me deeply, his eyes holding unconcealed pride and admiration. Just then, Mr. Astor also walked onto the stage. He took a microphone from the host, stood beside me, and faced the audience. Miss Vance spoke very well just now. Mr. Astor's voice was loud and powerful. I searched for Vance for years, not just for her divine skills, but for her unyielding spine that bows to neither capital nor fame. Such a person is a national treasure. No one is allowed to tarnish her. He pivoted, his gaze turning icy as he looked at Jason below the stage. Jason Sterling, do you think you only destroyed a woman's reputation? No. You destroyed your own conscience. You destroyed the most basic credibility of an entrepreneur. I announce here, Mr. Astor raised his hand. My legal team will formally file a lawsuit against Jason Sterling and Apex Venture Capital, pursuing a series of legal liabilities including commercial fraud and defamation. Not only will we demand compensation for all economic losses, but we will make him pay the price he deserves for his actions. If the previous public opinion storm only put Jason's company in crisis, Mr. Astor's words were equivalent to directly signing Apex Venture Capital's death warrant. Jason completely collapsed onto the floor, his face ashen. But this was still not the end. The doors to the hall were pushed open. Two officers in uniform, led by a middle-aged officer wearing the rank of colonel, marched with steady steps straight in. They walked up to Connor, stood at attention, and saluted. The leading colonel nodded to Connor, then walked onto the stage and took the microphone from Mr. Astor. Hello, everyone. I am the commanding officer from the Regional JAG and Military Police Detachment. His voice carried a unique military authority. With approval from higher command, I am here to announce two things. First, regarding the recent illegal acts of malicious slander against our outstanding officer, Captain Connor Hayes, and his spouse, Miss Clara Vance. The Joint Federal Military Task Force has completed its investigation and evidence collection. The primary suspect, Jason Sterling, is suspected of wire fraud, criminal defamation, and corporate embezzlement. The evidence is conclusive. Effective immediately, he will be apprehended by federal authorities for prosecution. As soon as he finished speaking, two FBI agents who had been waiting on the side immediately stepped forward. One on the left, one on the right. They hoisted the collapsed Jason up. Cold handcuffs clicked around the hands he used to use to sign million-dollar contracts. Jason lacked even the strength to struggle, dragged out without a word. The hall was completely silent. Everyone was shocked, speechless by this thunderous scene. The colonel's gaze swept the hall as he continued. Second, given Miss Clara Vance's outstanding contributions in the field of cultural preservation and the resilient character and noble integrity she displayed during this incident, she serves as a model for our military families. Higher command has decided to award Miss Clara Vance the title of National Military Spouse of the Year. He paused, turning his gaze to me, revealing a slight smile. Simultaneously, the Department of Defense, in conjunction with the American Heritage Foundation, is officially launching the Joint Civilian-Military Cultural Preservation Initiative. We will hire Miss Clara Vance as the Chief Technical Advisor for this initiative. Honoring you on behalf of a grateful nation. Clara Vance, please step forward. My mind was completely blank. I stepped forward almost instinctively. The colonel personally pinned a heavy medal bearing the national seal onto my chest. Then he turned to Connor in the audience and called out loudly, "Captain Hayes!" Connor snapped to attention, his posture as straight as a spear. "Sir, your wife, Clara Vance, is now officially entrusted to you to protect. Can you complete the mission?" Connor's gaze crossed the crowd and met mine from afar. His eyes were slightly red as he used all his strength to roar an answer that echoed through the entire hall. "Mission accepted, sir." In that moment, looking at him, looking at the millions of stars in his eyes, I knew that what was between us was no longer just a contract on a marriage certificate. Our destinies were already tightly bound together, sharing the glory of our home and country. After the press conference, Jason's name, along with the apex venture capital he built with his own hands, completely disappeared from public view. What he faced was the most just judgment of the law, and his spoiled mother, upon hearing the news of her son's arrest, fell severely ill. Her former arrogance completely turned into wails from a hospital bed. Their story, as far as I was concerned, had completely turned the page. My life, however, opened a brand new chapter. National Military Spouse of the Year, Chief Technical Advisor for the Joint Cultural Initiative. One heavy honor after another turned me from a conservator known only in small circles into a highly watched public figure. My work became exceptionally busy. On one hand, I had to prepare Mr. Astor's Conservation Center. On the other, I had to coordinate with the military's cultural initiative. I was practically spinning non-stop. So busy my feet barely touched the ground. But I enjoyed every minute of it. Being able to elevate my skills from restoring single objects to inheriting a culture and protecting history, this sense of value and mission filled me with strength every day. And Connor became my most solid backing. Although he was still busy with military training and deployments, whenever he had free time, he would drive over to pick me up from work. He didn't talk much. A lot of the time, we just sat in the car quietly listening to music. But he would carefully prepare warm water for me, and when I fell asleep exhausted against the passenger seat, he would gently cover me with his jacket. Our home also transformed from that temporary apartment into a true home for the two of us. I moved my professional books and tools into the study. He placed his various military medals and my award certificates side by side. On weekends, we would go to the supermarket together. He would push the cart behind me. I picked the ingredients. He paid the bill. I would make him his favorite pot roast. Although his cooking skills were poor, he would clumsily help me wash vegetables and do the dishes. We rarely talked about love, but every detail of our life was filled with warmth and unspoken understanding. That day, I had just finished a grueling 10-hour restoration seminar. Dragging my exhausted body home, I pushed open the door and smelled the aroma of food. I froze. I saw Connor, this man who rarely even entered the kitchen, actually wearing a pink cartoon apron, bustling around the kitchen. A full dinner spread was already set on the dining table. Although the presentation was a bit questionable, for example, the roasted asparagus was blackened and the mashed potatoes looked like paste, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. "What is this?" Hearing my voice, Connor poked his head out of the kitchen and saw me. Across that perpetually frozen iceberg face of his actually flashed a trace of nervousness and unnaturalness. "You're back." He took off the apron, walked over, and took my bag. Today is our 3-month anniversary of getting our marriage license. My heart felt a sharp warmth. A date even I had forgotten. He actually remembered. "So this meal is..." I looked at him. The tips of his ears flushed that suspicious red color again. I learned from the mess hall sergeant. "It might not taste very good. Just make do." I walked to the dining table, picked up a fork, took a bite of those blackened vegetables, and put it in my mouth. The taste was indeed terrible, salty and bitter. But I smiled and said to him, "It's delicious. Best asparagus I've ever had." He looked at me, a flash of joy in his eyes. Then, as if he had made up his mind, he pulled a small velvet box from behind his back. He dropped to one knee and opened the box in front of me. Inside the box was not a diamond ring, but a ring hand-polished from a brass casing. On the inside of the ring, 2 words were crookedly engraved: Hayes, Vance. He looked up at me, his eyes carrying unprecedented seriousness and solemnity. "I know our beginning was absurd. I can't give you a romantic ceremony. and I might not be able to give you constant companionship. But this ring, I made it from a bullet casing I kept from a deployment. I am giving it to you, which means I am handing my life and loyalty to you. I don't know if this counts as a proposal, but, Clara Vance, I love you. Are you willing to spend the rest of your life with me? My tears could no longer be controlled and fell, drop by drop, hitting that plain, unadorned brass casing ring. I didn't need a priceless diamond, nor did I need a world-famous wedding. Having his words was enough. I reached out my hand, letting him slide that ring onto my finger. Then I leaned down and pressed a deep kiss onto his lips. I am willing. I saw the sea of stars in his eyes. That was my way home. However, sweet moments are always fleeting. Just as we were holding each other, planning our future, his phone rang once again with that familiar ringtone indicating an emergency deployment. He answered the call, his face instantly turning grave. Copy that, Tier 1 readiness. Returning to base immediately. He hung up, looking at me apologetically. Although my heart was full of reluctance, this time, I felt no panic or sadness at all. I stood up, straightened the collar of his uniform, smoothing out every crease. Go! I looked into his eyes and said with a smile, I have the house covered. He looked at me steadily for a few seconds. Then he reached out and pulled me tightly into his embrace. Wait for me to come back, he said in a hoarse voice by my ear. Okay, I will wait for you to come back. I watched his military vehicle disappear into the night. This time, I did not cry. I went back inside, looked at the table of not-so-delicious food still steaming, looked at the unique brass casing ring on my hand. My heart filled with unprecedented peace and strength. I knew waiting would become a part of my life, but I wasn't afraid, because I knew that in a faraway place, there was a man using his life to protect our country, and I would use my hands to protect our culture and our small family. My war was over. His war was eternal, and I would be his most unwavering way home.